Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today and thank you for pledging to my Patreon page. I appreciate you all so much. And I'm just getting back into the swing of things after moving. I've still got a lot to do with my workspace, but everything's coming together gradually. And then I'm gonna have to move again in like a month and a half. So I'm trying not to unpack too much and just set up the bare bones minimum setup so that I can keep on working. But anyways, today I am posting some of the real-time footage of my recent water droplet painting. This is also the postcard for this month's $10 patrons, which will all be dispatching early to mid-April to everyone who pledged for this month, which is March. So for this painting, the color palette I used consisted of sap green, viridian, cadmium lemon, titanium white, and Mars black. I also brought in phthalo blue and dioxazine purple for little tiny details in the water droplets later on, but this was basically my palette and what I used for all the colors in this painting. I've gotten a lot of questions about why I have so many colors, like why I don't just work with a limited palette or even use primaries to mix all my palettes. Is it because I don't enjoy mixing colors? Am I too lazy to mix colors, or like do I not know how to mix the colors? And none of those are the reason for that. I never actually use colors as they are straight out of the tube, regardless of how many colors I use. I've got a pretty large collection of colors and 5 different reds, 7 different greens, just so many different tubes and variations of each color. Even though I have that many, like all of them get mixed on my palette. I will never just use a color straight out of the tube as it is. So they all get mixed on my palette. And the reason I have such a large variety is because many of them contain unique pigments, so they can't just be achieved by mixing your basic primaries or even a basic palette of not just primaries but maybe 8 colors where you've got some browns and 2 different kinds of blues, something a little bit more diverse. But I like to use really bright, vivid, saturated colors in my paintings, and a lot of those colors in my work, it's not found in real life. And although I work in a realistic style, the skin tones I paint are very, very saturated. They're not as they appear in real life. They're different. And that just applies to a lot of my paintings. I don't try to paint them exactly as they would appear in real life. I kind of take the element of realism, but I do something a bit different with that, and I exaggerate it a bit, make it something different. The inspiration for that comes from analog photography, like the colors that you achieve from film and various cross-processing effects where there are saturated colors and exaggerated green shadows. To achieve these effects, I need pigments that are bright, and your basic primaries very often are limited. You just can't achieve, I guess for example, like Gamblin's Radiant Green. You can't achieve that by mixing like an ultramarine blue, some kind of yellow, and white. You might get kind of close, but it's not going to be the same color. That color is standalone. It's completely unique, and it still gets mixed in with other colors on my palette. Sometimes instead of using white as a mixing base, I will use one of Gamblin's colors from their Radiant line, especially if the color I'm trying to achieve is already leaning towards a lighter magenta, green, or blue. Why go through the trouble of trying to come close to creating this unique color, but not even being able to get there because it has unique pigments? So really, it just gives me variety. Like cadmium red, for example, is a very strong, opaque red. And if you mix it with white, you're not going to get a magenta color. You're going to get something peachier. It's also not the best tinting color since it's opaque. It could actually alter the value of the color you had previously. And it also doesn't really mix well with blue. So like people say, well, you mix red and blue and you're going to get like some kind of violet or purple. But you're not going to get a beautiful, bright, vivid purple or violet. It's going to look kind of muddy. However, if you take quinacridone red, which is transparent and a bit closer to the magenta side, it actually mixes a lot better with blues, so you can get much better purples with that color. It's awesome for light, transparent layers, like glazing, for example, or just for tinting your colors, and it's not gonna make them weirder or uglier, which I found cadmium red kind of does sometimes. So, oh, and also if you take quinacridone red and you add yellow to it, it actually makes it redder. So you can really just play with it so much more. There's a little bit more variety. So although those two colors are a kind of red that you can include in your collection, they are very different, and I use them very differently. But I am planning on making a much more in-depth video about some of the colors I use and how I like to use them. But I just wanted to clarify why it is that I have such a large assortment of colors and why I would need 5 different kinds of red. It really allows me to have a much wider range of color possibility that I can mix. You know, once again, they never just get used straight up out of the tube. They always get mixed with something else. It just opens up more possibility, and I'm all about that. I like being able to have a wider range of colors than I can achieve. And if you are just working with primaries, although it's amazing to, get started with that and learn how to mix colors, get used to mixing them, learn how they work. Once you're a little bit more experienced, I feel like adding more unique pigments into your palette, knowing which colors you want to work with and what colors you want to achieve, you can actually expand further outside your basic color collection, your basic palette, and really start to get a little bit crazier with them. So yeah, I'm not trying to say that, working with primaries is bad or working with a limited palette is bad. Not at all. It actually is amazing for practicing mixing colors, for getting better. But I just found that there were some limitations when I was trying to paint a lot of these really bright, saturated, vivid colors. Like even in this droplet painting, like the greens are very saturated, and I used 2 different greens, I'm pretty sure. I think I also used chromium oxide green, which is another like brighter green. But yeah, it just gave me a huge range of greens in this painting alone. Some of them are more yellow, then it gets a little bit colder in the shadows, and I like having that variety. So that's why my collection is so huge. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for listening to me rant about colors, and please know that I'm just one angle on painting. There's so many artists out there. Every artist is going to have a different angle, a different experience, a different way of painting. We're all different. I can paint for 10 more years and still feel like I'm new to this. I'm always going to be learning something new, and I encourage you to explore for yourself, discover new methods, and maybe even take a painting workshop in your area, just to see how things are explained there. Because I feel like a lot of painting classes are going to be different. It's unique to the individual teaching it. It's unique to the artist and their methods. And I kind of noticed that in some art schools, the artists that come out of it all have a very similar painting style. I don't know if that's like a bad thing necessarily. I don't think so, but some people kind of end up mirroring their professors, which, I mean, if you can take that and go your own unique direction with it, that's great, but I would never want to mirror another artist's method too much or mirror their process. And I think in that case, being self-taught is an advantage because you are completely self-developed. You figure it out by experimenting, by trial and error, by making mistakes and learning from them. But at the same time, you might have been able to avoid those mistakes if you had someone super experienced guiding you. So I guess there are advantages and disadvantages. I'm not for or against either method. I I just don't really do well in a classroom environment. I don't do well with people telling me how to do things, period. I've always been kind of an independent-minded person. I never really liked group projects in school, and not to mention, like, with art school, although there's a lot of useful information there, I still have people emailing me asking me questions about painting or questions about starting an art business, and it's like they're almost done with their art school education. So, what are you doing? How have you not utilized this resource to your advantage? Like, so I don't know. I think it's all different. Not all professors are created equal. Not all art schools are created equal. So it's something to keep in mind that art is, there's no right or wrong way to do it. And that's kind of like what the modern art movement has shown us. And there's so many people right now that are absolutely head over heels in love with Impressionist art, which I am too, by the way. But back in the time of it being created, it was hated. People hated the Impressionists. They were rejected by the salon. They were not welcome to exhibit their art there. It was considered garbage. It was considered horrible. And now these paintings are worth just insane amounts of money, and they're so respected and so admired. So it just goes to show that you might think you're doing something bad, and if people are like hating it, you never know, because a few hundred years from now it might be doing really well. So art is completely subjective. I don't believe there's a wrong or right way to approach it, and that's really all I try to put out there with my videos, is that you can do it however you want. Nobody has to tell you how to do things. Just make sure that you are being kind to yourself along the way. But thank you guys so much for watching and for supporting my Patreon. I appreciate you all so much. I'm gonna go ahead and let the rest of this footage play. If you want to skip to any part you want, or just throw on some music while you watch, or just exit out, totally up to you. Come back to it later. I hope you all have a beautiful and inspiring week. I am sending all my hugs and my love. Bye guys, take care.